Recent archaeological discoveries suggest that the catastrophic eruption that destroyed Pompeii struck at midday on the 24th of October, 79 AD, not in August, as previously thought. In the first hours after the eruption, ash and pumice rained down on Pompeii. Meters accumulated in the streets. What happened next here in Pompeii is really just part of the story. In those hours after the eruption, this entire region was devastated. This wasn't just any old region. This was one of the richest and most densely populated parts of the Roman Empire. The rich volcanic soil here meant that there were a network of farms and vineyards, while down on the coast there were resorts and ports. And one prosperous seaside resort, 8 miles northwest of Pompeii, tells us a huge amount about what happened in the aftermath of the eruption. Down there is Herculaneum, at least the part of the Roman town that's been excavated. 3/4 of it still lie beneath our feet. Things went very differently here to how they went in Pompeii. Pompeii was buried by about 5 meters of volcanic debris. But here at Herculaneum, the town was buried by 25 meters. This giant cliff is made from the debris of that eruption of Mount Vesuvius. But what's interesting about this cliff is there's no pumice layer. It's almost entirely composed of very fine volcanic ash. And over the years, that's hardened into stone. And what that suggests is that in the first 12 hours after the eruption, Herculaneum was largely spared bombardment by volcanic debris. The millions of tons of pumice and ash spewing from Vesuvius was blown south towards Pompeii. But Herculaneum was just upwind of the volcano. So in the first phase of the eruption, the town largely avoided the inundation. That meant that in the first 12 hours after the eruption, the people of Herculaneum had an opportunity to evacuate. Sitting right next to the coast, the best way to escape was by sea. This street would have been packed with a terrified mass of people, all heading down here, clutching their most precious possessions, heading for the harbour, which lay at the bottom of this hill. Now, we know that really most people would have made a run for it, because when archaeologists came to excavate all these houses, they found very few bodies of people that had stayed behind. In Pompeii, the pumice raining down forced many to shelter in their homes, while in Herculaneum, evacuation was the obvious choice. In 79 AD, the town of Herculaneum was up there, and this was the seafront. This was the beach. And it was down here that the people of Herculaneum came once Vesuvius started to erupt. And they'd have used any boat they could to try and get off this shore and get out to sea and to safety. And for a long time, it was thought that most of them did get away. But then archaeologists working down here made a horrific discovery. For 12 hours after the eruption of Vesuvius, Pompeii was inundated by meters of volcanic debris, while the nearby town of Herculaneum escaped relatively unscathed. But then, around midnight on that last day, the full force of the volcano struck Herculaneum with staggering ferocity. The vast column of debris spewing from Vesuvius collapsed, causing an avalanche of superheated ash called a pyroclastic surge to cascade down the volcano. By the time the first pyroclastic surge reached Herculaneum, it had lost much of its momentum. It moved through the abandoned town without destroying the buildings. Then it came like a mighty waterfall over this cliff down onto the beach. But the heat was still intense, 500 degrees centigrade. And as it crashed onto the beach, nothing could survive.